Welcome to Slightly Off Script, the marriage show where we remind you that marriage can be stupid good and wicked fun. I'm one of your hosts, Bethany Needham, here with the most handsome man in the universe. I would call it Mr. Universe himself, Andy Needham.
Do you remember the old Jim Gaffigan bit about Mr. Universe?
Yes, that's actually what
the
was
most
coming to mind.
pretentious title. I am Mr. Universe.
It's just like, who votes in that? Well, I voted, and 100%
The
of
universe
the
of this studio.
Yes. You got 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
101%.
All the votes.
Yes.
All the votes.
All the votes that were taken were for you.
I'm just going to challenge you that I think your creativity on the opening is declining.
Oh.
I feel like, it's not like, it's not off a cliff yet, so we still have a point where you can come back. But I think we've had a little bit of the mid-season dip.
Oh.
And so I just need you to step up your game just a
I'm sorry. Are you insulting my intro?
I'm not insulting it. I'm encouraging improvement.
All right. I'm taking back my Mr. Universe vote.
That shifted quickly. Now we're in a fight.
Perfect. Let's talk about conflict.
It's a ball cap Saturday in the multiverse of the Rick studio.
And let's just say that I want to tell you that in this world, there is a storm happening, and it shouldn't be because of the time of year. And I'm a little mad about it.
Yeah, if the power could go out, that would be annoying.
Yeah. The whole thing is annoying. I'm sorry. I know I live here and I should know better, but I was over winter, and apparently winter was not over.
Well, by the time this releases, I hope we'll pray about that. So
yes.
So today we're gonna do some questions that were generated when we did our live podcast, but we weren't able to get to. And they had so many great questions that I was like, this is like awesome. They did a bunch of R&D for us of the questions that people want to have answered.
And we're still only going to have a huge stack still left to go through.
Maybe occasionally we'll throw an episode like this. And if you have questions that you'd like for us to discuss on the podcast, please feel free. You can go to BethanyNeedham.com and you click on the podcast link. There's a form, and then you can even send an audio question, which that's super cool. I'll awkwardly lean over and press a button and play your audio.
We're going to get you a better table.
That's all right.
It's not in the budget
limited budget.
Yeah.
I need to book a few more live events. But then when we did the live event at Hope Fellowship in Jaffrey, they had these like conversation starters on the table. So I thought we could start the podcast because we didn't have time. We were getting ready to speak.
Yeah.
To like go through, we won't go through all of them, but I thought I could ask you a couple of these questions.
Ooh, and I didn't read those, so
it's going to be a surprise.
Yep.
Okay.
Hopefully I don't blow it.
If you had to live in another country for a year, where would you want to go? And what's the first fun thing that we do there? Apparently, where would you go? And what's the first fun thing we do? So I guess we're going together.
We're going to Africa. We're going to live in a hut. Yeah. And we're going to go on a safari.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. I want to say ride elephants, but in my research, I realized that I don't think elephants actually want to or prefer being ridden. And I love elephants. And so I want it to be a positive experience for me and the elephant. So maybe just go with them. Oh, an elephant sanctuary. I'm specifying. I want to go to an elephant sanctuary.
Not an elephant graveyard?
No. Baby elephants would be a bonus.
Yep. Okay. All right, let's see. Describe me using only 3 appropriate emojis. I added the word appropriate.
I was like, you lost me at appropriate.
I kind of went into that question not knowing what it was, and then I saw it. I was like, I got to edit this.
All right. I'm giving you the flame emoji.
Ooh.
I'm giving you the muscle emoji. And then why are you laughing? And then, oh gosh, this is 3 you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Flame, muscle, and is there a universe emoji?
I was thinking you could do like something to do with cooking, like a spatula, like a grill or something.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, actually, that's pretty good.
I don't know what there are for emojis.
I'll give you a grill emoji. Wait, I feel like you need to answer.
Your 3 emojis would definitely be like the arm muscle thing would be like one of them.
Fantastic.
Something with a big smile.
A smiley emoji.
And then a bee. The other thing I do is like the crown and the bee, because queen bee.
Oh, so, gotcha. Okay. All right.
Maybe the crown, the bee, and the
crown.
And the flex. And the flex. Doesn't
Nobody,
work for the audio.
it's like nobody knows switches. Andy's flexing,
Yeah,
so
not flipping her off.
definitely. And the what emoji? You said appropriate.
Yeah, we say mostly appropriate. Okay, what's a small thing that I do almost daily that makes you smile?
Oh, a small thing you do daily? Is this like smile as in it makes me giggle?
I
Because,
don't know. You can answer that however you want to.
oh,
What's a giggle one?
a giggle one is how when you're drying off in the shower, I can hear it from anywhere in the house. Put the towel on your foot and you like shake the towel to make it like fan off your leg.
This is TMI.
It makes me laugh every
Every
time.
time.
Because downstairs, when you're like
Yeah, I
showering
know.
upstairs,
Sounds like a bird flapping its wings.
it
There's like a
sounds like there's a
yeah,
helicopter
taking
taking
off.
off out of the bathroom. So that one definitely makes me laugh.
It's funny how like we are all have little thing idiosyncrasies, like even like the way that you shower, like the order that you do things,
Yep.
and the way that you dry, like how you dry off, like those things that just gotta like become a thing. Yeah.
I will say a like smile as in I just find it so sweet is when I come up, especially after a long day, I come up to the bedroom to go to bed and it's like a turn down service because the throw pillows are set nicely on the
All
side
100 of them.
and all 1,000 of them. And I have a heating pad already warmed up under my blankets. Like it's like you set it up for me to go to bed at night. It's so, and that makes me smile.
Oh, thanks.
I just set the bar so high for
Yeah. I mean,
listening.
anytime you refill my coffee cup, that's a nice feeling. You'll come in and pour the coffee. Good one.
Yes,
So,
I need to
um,
do that more.
yeah. Anytime you put your things away, that makes me smile.
Poor guy, barely ever smiling.
No, that's not true.
Just
I
sad.
try to design systems that work. Just kidding. All right. Let's see. I can do one more.
We clearly prepared
Yeah,
ahead
no,
in advance.
no, this is, this is off script. So what is one fun activity that you've never done, but you've always wanted to try?
Ooh, a fun activity that I've never done.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good one. All right. Do you have one on the top of your head? Well,
Travel in an RV.
Ooh, I shouldn't have asked you because that one might have popped into my head.
Yeah.
I don't know if this counts, but I'm throwing it out there. I would love to hike
Mm.
in Europe. Go
Ooh,
hiking.
that's good.
Honestly, anywhere like
Yeah.
just a very different terrain.
I think like an RV and do like from like Arizona up through the Rockies would be like one of my dreams. And then we've always talked about going up to Banff, like it's up too.
Oh,
So,
yes.
so yeah,
Yeah. I do. I have the itch to go do some hiking in different
yeah.
areas and just, I don't know, there's something.
It's just really interesting. Like the diversity, like New England hikes are amazing. Like we love hiking in New
Oh, yeah.
Hampshire. But when I hiked, I did one hike up in Sedona. That's where it was. Sedona, Arizona, just for a day. I had an extra day when I was traveling to a conference and I went with a friend. And there was no roots or rocks. So it was actually like it was like, oh, this is like, I don't have to pay attention to every single step that I'm taking. Yeah.
Good old Sedona, Arizona.
I thought we were doing a pretty hard hike. And then like a group of women came riding by on mountain bikes. And I was like, all right, maybe not. Maybe we're not doing that hard of a hike.
You're like, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's like the equivalent of those we were talking about the kids that when we go skiing
yeah.
and we're like barely
Yep.
holding it together and they go flying
Yep.
by you. Like no big deal for
I
them.
actually get a kick. That's actually like a simple pleasure in my life is, I don't know. I like getting dusted by, I don't know, that feeling like when I'm hiking and somebody's like way faster than me. And that's a big change in my life because I've always been competitive. Even like when I drive, and I have a long drive today, but like if somebody like cuts me off or is driving stupid, my move is the smile and the thumbs up. Like you go, you obviously have something very important. I don't get angry. I just get like kind of like, that's funny.
Oh, I think it's fun to play the game to create the narrative for them.
Yeah.
And the funnier, the better. Just one, it helps you not get angry about things that just don't matter. But like, what could possibly be happening with that person that they are driving erratically? And so, yeah, you make up like a whole storyline of someone giving birth while driving, holding the child with one hand and like gunning it to get to the hospital. Yeah. And
This is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but back to Africa?
Yeah.
Talk about crazy driving. Do you remember like how many humans would be on like one motorcycle.
Yes. Is it motos?
Motos,
Okay,
yeah.
so the funniest thing was you have these motos, which are basically like tiny little motorcycles, and the only laws in terms of safety at
Yeah.
any level is that the driver
Yep.
has to be wearing a helmet. And so what that means is you're driving around and you see this family, and I'm talking family, where the dad is driving and he has a helmet and no one else has a helmet, including the two small children that are sandwiched
Yeah.
between dad and mom, who's right behind them, but also mom has a baby strapped on her back.
Yeah.
And it's just the funniest thing I've
Yeah.
ever seen. But they're just smiling and like, and it took me a while at first. I'm like,
Why is dad wearing a helmet?
literally, I was like, what a jerk move. Why is like only dad? And then I realized it's basically the only law that the driver has to be wearing a helmet.
Yeah, I think I have a picture of like 5 humans on one.
Yeah,
Like
it
it's a
was
kind of
impressive.
like a dirt bike. It's like a small motorcycle. Yeah.
Well, and truthfully, I still remember as like when I was a kid, I still got a little bit of that the good old
Mhm.
days where when we were going somewhere, you could just hop in the back of a pickup truck and while your parents were driving somewhere, like the seatbelts, keeping kids in car seats until they're 17 and all of that just was
Oh yeah.
non-existent. We were
I'm thankful because I get the part of like when we'd win a little league game, we'd jump in the back of the truck and like honk the horn and parade through town, going out for ice
yes,
cream
that's
and
I
yeah.
again, I get the risk factor, but I do think there was something about that was just fond
My all time
memories.
favorite story that's related to that is that my parents bought a van, not a minivan. We had plenty of minivans later on, wood panel minivans,
Mhm.
but they bought a van and it only had one bench seat in it. So it's like there's 4 kids, 3 seats. A little bit of a dilemma here. So my dad went to the junkyard and he found another van that did not match at all. It was like a different brand. It was not even like the same Dodge van. And he got a green linoleum bench seat that was just sat flat in the back of the van. And the rule was that only Andy can sit in the back of the van. And this is like one of those things that like later on in life you process back and you're like, I don't know why this is,
Were you
but
like the expendable
well, so the
child?
best part of it was that everybody had to be buckled in. That was a very big rule in our house.
Yeah.
But so I'd be in the back, I'd get into the green linoleum seat, I'd buckle in, but this seat was in no way attached to the vehicle at all. Like zero, no, not a screw, not like a strap, nothing. And so like if you'd stop at a stoplight, like it would like literally you'd rock back and forth, forward and backwards. And yep, I
I
had
feel
to
like you just outed your parents. Like CPS
oh
is gonna show up
it's
40
a little
years
late for that.
later at their
There's a lot of
door. They're gonna get
yeah,
arrested.
that's actually not the worst vehicle story that I could actually share. So I'll save those other ones for
Oh,
another time. But yeah, so I think my parents were like, well, he's lived the most years already, so he's the most expendable. So
or you were like the biggest pain in the butt, and they're like, he went.
dad's like slamming on the brake. Like
You thought it was stop
yeah.
signs. He
Well,
was like,
I didn't see a stop sign anywhere. We don't even have a stoplight in this town.
you know, a Dunkin' Donuts or a
Yeah,
stoplight. That's how
well,
small this town is.
so getting back on script.
Why?
I think I'm getting worse. Yeah, you have to up the intros, and I've been overachieving in the
Yeah,
off script stuff. So bring us back, Bethany.
let's bring it on back. Okay, so was looking through our list of questions. Again, some really, really good ones. This one jumped out at me a little, so we're going to chat through this one first.
This has a lot of layers to it.
There are a lot of layers to it, and I'm going to take it as a Holy Spirit nudge because it was one that sort of I actually immediately empathized with. I am going to acknowledge though I am making an assumption. I'm reading this from a wife's perspective and so I'll respond to it, but we'll go both directions on this. I'm going to read through the whole thing and then we're going to go back through the different layers of it, okay? What do you do when one spouse is ready and excited for when the kids are growing up and out of the house and are excited for the freedom and more alone time, but the other spouse is scared of the alone time and the empty house? So this is kind of the next layer of it. How much sex should we really be having? Is there a right amount each week? So let's start at the front end of that. What do you do when one spouse is ready, excited, and just thinking about someday? I'm, man, I just feel like someone was like listening into like earlier marriage conversations between us because you will had like countdowns on your phone.
Till the kids graduated, yeah.
Yeah. And
That sounds so terrible because it makes it sound like I don't care about our kids.
you love our
I very much
children.
love them. No,
Yes.
I think that with the uniqueness for us and what I have felt and why there's a couple reasons why I felt a lot of joy in this season, which is two things. One, getting married so young, like I felt like it was like we were immediately in the deep end of the pond, just, you know, thrown into all the adult things really quickly, parenting and all that stuff. And we've talked in previous episodes about the challenges of that, but that's just, we only had 15 months of our entire marriage where we didn't have children up until this year where they were off at school. So that I think is a huge factor in terms of my perspective on it. And the second thing I would say is that we did do a lot of work ahead of time, not perfectly, but I think because we knew that, we also had this reality of like, we're going to have a lot of years together on the back end of this raising kids thing. So we better work on that. But I will say there's other transitions, for example, having kids, where I felt like we were definitely not in sync. And some of that is just our wiring, where it's like, for example, the baby phase. Like, I mean, you did have some of the challenges of postpartum, so I don't want to paint it like it was you get to describe that. It's not rose colored glasses, but you did love having young children.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, I loved having kids and I love my kids to death. And there are sweet memories I have of that. That was not like, I really loved when they could tie their own shoes and catch a ball. Like that was like my phase of parenting where I was like, this is the sweet spot.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I don't know. That's kind of my first thing is that we have had times where we've been out of sync on that, sort of the season that we're in.
Yeah, and I would say as I was reading sort of the first part of this, what do you do when? And the thought that came to mind, and I say this from I feel like I not too long ago had to start answering this question for myself because there was a time where we were pretty close to like we're getting closer to empty nest. It wasn't just this wild idea because
Mhm.
we had many conversations when the kids are little. If you have small kids, you have those conversations.
Imagine if we didn't have all this chaos.
Yeah, like after a sleepless night where everybody's dreaming of like someday, but honestly feels like that day is never going to
Yeah.
come. Like, no, this is just our life now. And then there's sort of that time where you start creeping up on the kids are getting more independent. I know huge thing when they enter high school, they start driving where you're like, "Oh, this is happening. Like this is going to happen." And I honestly started to wrestle with what and this is why I'm saying if a wife wrote this, I don't know. But just what this listener was describing is wait a second. Like I felt like your excitement was increasing. You're like, "Oh my goodness, just think about this. We got empty, like all these possibilities." And I
We're
really
going to turn the bedroom into a podcast studio.
yeah. And if I'm being like in the moment, not that I didn't have there wasn't any excitement, but I actually felt more dread sounds extreme, but just this, oh my goodness, what is that the reality of that actually going to look like? And so I started having to ask myself, like, kind of dig down beneath that. Where is that coming from? Because I think that's part of how I would answer this is I think it's important to be honest with yourself about where it's coming from because it could be coming from a place of something in your relationship with your spouse that needs to be addressed. I would say in my case, it actually was recognizing how much of my everything was connected to me as a mom
Mm,
versus me as Bethany.
yeah.
And this sort of almost scary, who am like, what am I even supposed to do when
Yep.
the kids don't need me? Like when they're gone. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I'd 100%. If, I mean, one of God's profound graces in this season was that in a very surprising and amazing way that you were able to step into this new vocation at the same time. And so, because if you, to be honest, like, I don't know that we would be in the same place. Like, and that's been a very hard, like, this week was a very hard week for you in your job. So, like, I'm not saying it's easy, but that has taken up a lot of your time and energy and effort. And if it's like, it can't just be the two of us, like, staring at each other in
Yeah.
it's not, we're not on our honeymoon. Like, this is not the honeymoon. This is life. And, you know, every transition in our lives, if you move somewhere, if you have a challenge, all the milestones. And the thing about your kids leaving is like, you have this, like, I called it milestone alley because it was like every couple months, it was like, a major milestone was happening for our kids, 18th birthday and junior prom and getting your driver's license. You have all these things that are happening. And then all of a sudden that ends. And like you walk out of the dorm room with, and people have different stories. Sometimes their kids don't launch at that phase, but those changes are revealing. Like what the issue is actually not whether you're empty nest or not. It's actually something underneath that. And when you get into those spaces and the change happens, that's revealing something underneath. So really the question is, what's the thing beneath the thing?
Yeah.
And how do you cultivate what are, again, this whole transition for our lives, and we're still doing this, is like we're trying to say, okay, what are the rhythms? What are the realities? What are the things we're fine tuning? We even things that we've done in the last month or two where it's like we've changed what time we wake up. We're still experimenting. You've changed what gyms you go to. So like we're still in that recalibration phase
Hmm.
for sure, but all of those things are a work in progress. And so you have to realize that, especially if your starting point is so different as a couple, that recalibration is going to take some extra work.
Yeah. I would say I don't know that I can only speak from the wife and mom perspective in this, but the other side of this for me was recognizing that when my kids were home, there is a certain side of motherhood that you have to show up in a certain way because it's what's required. Like, you don't necessarily, as a mom, get to decide the things you do and do not like. Like, there's a lot of it that you don't actually have control. You can't,
Yeah.
like, you're meeting needs. These are, sometimes small children and even as young adults, like, you're just, you're doing what God's called you to do. And there's this, I don't even know if I know how to put this into words, but I think I somehow translated that to, okay, so when the kids are gone, that same thing is what marriage is going to be now. And not that there's not serving in marriage, not that you don't, but I actually think one of the things that can get lost is that in our marriage, we actually get to together sort of build this relationship. Like, I actually can voice things
Yeah.
in this relationship that are like, these are things that I really enjoy, or these are things that are just not my jam. Like, I don't just have to show up and deal with things. And the example being like, what do we do for dates? Like, what do we do in our free time? And it's
Yeah.
okay for, I feel like that's been part of the calibration
Yeah.
is, what do date nights look like? What do our time together? Also, just as important is, what is our time apart look like?
Yeah.
Like, what are there's we've this isn't like a for sure rhythm, but we have sort of had this soft rhythm of Saturday mornings. I Both of us have gone off on our own to do things that are, you go to your gym, I go to my gym.
We've kind of said the morning, is like do your own space. Yeah.
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 But then we kind of come back together and we do things we enjoy together. And I know it sounds crazy, but prior to Empty Nest, I don't think I had an imagination for the fact that we are both adults. So we get to build this in a beautiful way, that things that are life-giving. That's both our together time and our time on our own.
Yeah, especially when there's a gap. Again, we do spend more time together now than we did before.
Yeah.
That's true. But I've been even thinking like, okay, what are the new hobby? I have more bandwidth now. I have more
Hmm.
time. Some of that I can give to work and ministry. Like if I'm going away today. I don't have to worry about rushing home to get to a recital or a game or something. So that's a privilege. So some of that extra time and bandwidth does go towards work and ministry. Some of that is for us. But I think
Hmm.
if it's just those two things, like I have more ability to show up for, like, we're having a married couple over this next week that is a young in ministry. So we have opportunity to do that. Finding hobbies to do, things that, some of it we'll work on together, like our yard, and other things are just for me or for you.
Yeah.
And I've been able to fight for some rhythms, like the guys that I hang out with every other Thursday, we get together for a couple hours. So I think being careful that you don't like, this is not a time to like ratchet up codependency. It's a time to like recalibrate what relational rhythms look.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, if you are a wife looking at this and you have been, even if you're not a stay-at-home mom, but especially if you're a stay-at-home mom and you're looking at this as like this, think of it as a major career shift like anyone would go through. But in a like, be open to the fact that God has something in this for you. Like we mentioned this, but for me, I didn't see this job coming.
Mm.
Like I think there's also this beauty of, yes, there's things in your marriage in emptiness, but there's also things for
For
you
you. Yeah.
as an individual that God has that's special and unique for this next season. So look at the thing beneath the thing is that like,
Yeah.
I think asking the questions and then being honest about it because listen, if you honestly are looking at your marriage and you're concerned about this next season and you're like, I think this concern comes because there's a disconnect in our relationship, then don't wait till empty nest to start doing work on that. Like work on it now.
Yeah.
If it's a concern about what it looks like, the one thing I will say with empty nest, and I do feel like we had a good foundation going in, but open, honest
Wow.
communication
100%.
is maybe more critical than it's ever been before because it can be very easy when you spend this much time together to not talk about
Yeah.
the things you need to talk about. And so being able to have conversations that are like, I love you. I need this like few hours. I got to go do something by myself.
Yep.
Like I need whatever that is, like having open, honest communication with one another.
I want to get to the second part of that question in a second, but maybe a way to bridge to that is this is why I think it was a good exercise for us was to look at our marriage values. And if you've never kind of thought about like what are the values of your marriage, like that is a very good way to kind of get into this conversation
Yeah.
and distill and then look at because I know one of the themes that's come up a lot with questions that we've been asked, like one of our values is community. And oftentimes you get, people that are in the thick of raising kids and they're like, we're just trying to make sure everybody gets fed every day. Like,
Everyone have clean
yeah,
underwear.
if we can get to church like not 40 minutes late, then we're doing great. There is an opportunity when you have this transition and you might have some more bandwidth of time to say like, okay. And I do think for us, community is a value. And that's actually an ongoing conversation. Like you've talked about like different levels of friendship that you have. And then there are some types of friendships that you still are hoping for and you haven't solved that yet.
Yeah.
And we actually talk openly about that. And
I'm taking applications now.
yeah,
Just going, I'm just
be
kidding.
my friend. That's another forum on BethanyNeedham.com.
Yes. Will you be my friend? I need friends.
By talking about our values, I guess is what I'm trying to get
Yeah.
at. That allows us to be able to have a safe way to have the conversation and frame
Yeah.
framework.
Right. And transitioning to this, I will say a big shift and something to consider when you go from having kids at home to not having kids at home is your sex life. I'm just going to be blunt. Like when there's not kids in the house to worry about anymore. And if there has been sort of, it's been hidden by the busyness of
Mhm.
life, this, uh, maybe it's not been not having clear communication around it, or just this concern of like, oh my goodness, the kids have been my buffer in this. And when they're gone, I feel like,
It's sort of like a fire, and one person's looking at it like when the door opens and the oxygen gets in here, we're gonna have a amazing fire, and the other person's like, this house is gonna burn down.
yes, yeah, honestly. And so the question, how much sex should we really be having? Is there a right amount each week? And again, just speaking like personally from this was something that I struggled with. And for me, digging down beneath the surface was recognizing that one, I did struggle with intimacy in marriage and understanding God's design in that. And even understanding that God's creation of that and his like creation involving pleasure. I think I, for a long time, and this was not on you, this was in my own head, again, not having clear communication, was I just got to this place of assuming this part of marriage is something that God's just called me to serve my husband. And like the men are built and wired for pleasure and the women are built and wired to bring the pleasure. And that's not one, not biblical, but two, when you're in that space, I like looking at empty nest, you're like, oh no.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things to say or could be said about this. I think a foundational area though is you just kind of described it like what is God's design for marriage and intimacy because there's so many pressures and forces and visions of intimacy or sex, maybe better said, in the world that are so distorted. And
Hmm.
some of those things, as we've talked about before, even infiltrate well-meaning movements within the church. And so I think your foundational thing is getting recalibrated towards like, what is God's design for this? And the foundational thing for, in my, and maybe it's different for you, so I'm interested in what you'd say about this, but for me, the freedom is found in the idea of intimacy, of just, this is a lifelong process
Hmm.
and it is not a moment. And there are times when I feel the pressure like of desire in a moment. And maybe it's getting a little older and being a middle-aged man versus a younger man. But I think I start to understand, like, no, if I want this to be great for the long haul, then taking a long view of this and a perspective of like, what if I had to trade, frequency now
Yep.
in exchange for the opportunity for pleasure, more shared pleasure later? And
Mm.
it's not quite as clean as that, but I think that's how, like, for me, I've had to frame this thinking, and that's been helpful for me. And so you're kind of like, I think in these transitions, you got to think about two levels. Like, there's the zoom in, like, where are we right now? What are we going to do this week, this month? And then where do we want to be in 10 years? Like, what does that look like? I mean, we'll be older and more wrinkly, but
Well, that's a visual no one needed.
so yeah, I don't know if that helps, but I think that's a starting point. And so if the point is to recapture God's heart and vision for intimacy, then that, just like any other discipleship journey, is a lifelong pursuit. And just like any other thing, our formation is not just for us. And so the reason that I want to follow and be more like Jesus is not just so that I live this monastic, isolated life. It's so that I can share that with, in my marriage, I want to share that with you. And in the context of intimacy, the formation, and that I want our marriage bed to abound with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And it needs all those things.
Mm. Yeah, that was good. You just like you threw out fruit of the spirit, like love that
Good old
memorization.
church, thank you, Alana.
Yeah. This has got to be the first time that I just want to pause. Awana and sex are being talked about in the same conversation. Oh man. Okay, hold on. I gotta
We gotta
clear
get
my
that
brain on this
sparks
one.
back.
Yeah, there's too many.
Yeah.
Too many.
This is danger zone.
Yes. All right. I'm gonna
Back
pull
on
us back
script.
on script. No, I love how you describe that. And I think one of the things, again, for me, a big shift was recognizing that our together pleasure was actually more pleasure even for you. So the part of me that
Hmm.
had this false idea that all this is ever going to be is me showing up and making sure that you are experiencing pleasure. Not that I'm in misery, but like actually sort of realizing, one, that there could be pleasure in this for me as well, and two, that you actually desired that. Was honestly, it sounds crazy, but that was
Yeah.
like mind blowing for me, that there was a part of this connection, that an intimacy that we had, that you're like, no, I want you to also be a part of this. And so us being willing to have conversation, and we have talked about this a lot, but those conversations not happening in the moment, in wherever, like in the bedroom or empty nest, anywhere in the house.
Sorry, kids.
Yeah. But outside of those moments, be like, actually, and this is, I mentioned this earlier
Yeah,
in this
it's huge.
conversation, these are the conversations you have to intentionally have. But then having them when you're like, we've had them sitting in the morning, sipping our coffee, like, hey, let's talk through this.
Yeah.
And
And not try to solve it right now. Let's just
yeah,
try to move the conversation one step forward.
yeah,
Because it's not like, again, that's the long game part of it. Because I think sometimes we will have those. I completely concur. I would say one of the most foundational pieces of advice I could give anybody, especially when it comes to, I mean, this is true of like, this is also true of finances. Like, you don't want to have the fight about money in the middle of Target, and you don't want to have
yeah, yeah,
the fight about intimacy in the middle of intimacy. Like, that's
yeah,
just that it's
yeah,
not a good. But you may have to experience conflict to get to a healthy place, and the way to do that is to do it in a de-escalated environment,
yes,
and to get more comfortable with trusting each other, and use a lot of the story I'm telling myself is, and just kind of bring that conversation to a safe place. So that's one. But then the other thing, and this is especially, I don't know, maybe I'm being overly gender stereotyping, but similar to like when you were struggling with depression, I wanted to solve that. I think the guy is like, this is a problem to be solved. Often that's how it can show up. And you're like, I just want to get it fixed.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, no, no. This is a journey towards health.
Yeah.
And we're just going to try to take one step in that direction.
Yes. And in the gender stereotype, I'm going to speak to the women for a minute. Part of these conversations is women, you need to be honest. You need to be honest and open with your spouse. And if you have sat where I've sat, then maybe you understand that fear of, I grew up with this fear like that I'm going to say something that is dishonoring or emasculating to my husband and I'm going to do this damage that can never be undone. And rather than having not in a hurtful way, but having really honest, hey, these things are things that I find pleasurable and this I do not. Like just being very open and honest in that and not falling. I think there's a reason that there's sort of that Hollywood makes jokes about like women faking things and everything else, because I actually think that there is a side of this that it is true, like those stereotypes that there's something beneath it. And without being rude or crass, I just want to say, one, I think open, honest communication and working together working on like that. This is something that we both can experience pleasure. And I can speak to the truth that all of those things together can bring you to a place that I know I never imagined could be true in marriage, where you're not asking the question of, okay, how many times do I which I was in that place. Okay, how many times a week is going to keep you happy where I feel like I'm doing my role? And I actually feel like God in his grace and everything that we're talking about together has moved us to a place where that's not even a conversation that I have anymore. I won't tell you the conversation I have now, but that's not the conversation. And it's not just, a lot of it has to do with trial and error and playing the long game and just all of these things. And it starts with like actually being willing to be honest and truthful with one another in awkward, uncomfortable things. Like
Yeah.
those, we're married. You
Yeah.
have to be
Well,
able to have those
if you want to
conversations.
have intimacy, then you have to be vulnerable and intimate.
Yeah.
Like, and I think there's a massive difference between having sex and having intimacy.
Yeah.
And when those two things come together, then that is awesome.
Yeah.
And when those two things are not together, or one of those is very dysfunctional, and it could be that you're honestly like, you are really walking in lockstep, like relationally intimate, but you have somebody has, it could be a health issue or something like that. There's a lot of different factors that come into play there, but you have to be willing to talk. Even those I mean, again, aging, getting older, like, you know, things you have to talk to your doctor about. Like, I don't know, maybe we're doing a podcast talking about a lot of these things. So we're probably in a, certain demographic of being willing to be vulnerable about this. But I think the more that you can cultivate that and be willing, and just, some of it is just funny. Don't take yourself so seriously is another thing I would say.
Yes.
Like humor is actually a really good tool. In now, not there are moments when it's not a good tool, but there we do kind of laugh. We have, a lot of laughter, and that's the part of the play. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the long game part too. Like honestly, sometimes things are not going to go
No.
as planned. Sometimes things you're like, well, this is
Yeah.
awkward and we would
Try
not
again
be
later. Never.
we would not be teaching a class on this.
No.
But if you can't laugh about it, if you can't then it
Yeah.
creates more tension, which is not helpful. So yeah.
Couple other things I just want to say about this, and I think we'll probably do a deeper dive in this space. So I may repeat these things later on, but one is that, empty nest or a season, like it's not, I said this before, but it's not your honeymoon.
Mm,
Like this is not just like, running around every day without clothes on. I mean, you get to have you do have freedom. So like and that's where I think if that's the fear, like one spouse is like, we're just, it's every day we're going to be just making love all day. And the other person's like, that doesn't sound like my design.
yeah.
That's going to be hard. So it's not your honeymoon. And then second, and we've practiced this a lot, is that there are times when you kind of have to have an intimacy reset. And we actually use that terminology often because, we spend a week away together, and it is a little more like a honeymoon-ish type of time for us. but then we can't come home and just expect that we're going to maintain like, okay, we've taken, because I think the conqueror, especially in a guy, is like, I've taken new turf and now this is the new normal. And this is
Mhm.
how it's always going to be, whether it's frequency or something that you're doing or whatever it is. And I've, if you just cannot live in that reality, it's not sustainable. And so there are times when we just like an intimacy reset is something where we just say, we're going to ratchet down the complexity and the frequency, and we're just going to keep things really, really simple for a short period, for a time. And then, because again, I think that there's like, if you do certain things, and that can be part of the fear factor too for the spouse is like, if all of a sudden there's a week where we have a lot of frequency, is that the new normal?
Yep.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. And again, it comes back to you have to keep talking through it. Like you have to talk through those things of, okay, somebody has to say, I think
Time
I'm
out. Yeah.
feeling, yeah, timeout. I kind of need a reset. Sometimes it is health stuff
Yeah.
that you got to have hard conversations about. Hey, I'm going through this thing and
Seems like every month that happens for
it's,
you.
it just, yeah, it's a
I don't even know
cycle.
what's going
It's,
on. Just kidding.
and yeah, but again, having the safety, that's a big word for me and
Yeah.
something that I feel like we've had to build over
Mm.
time is building safety in that. Like this, you are a safe person for me to have those conversations with. And the other side I will add is just the grace aspect because we do also need to give each other permission to be disappointed, to not respond
Yep.
super well, to
Yeah. Don't listen to this and be like, there's never been a time where we disagree. Like, yeah, it
yeah.
happens every week.
Well, yeah, because there will be those moments where, whatever, like one spouse wants something, the other spouse is like, I
Some of it's how we respond to stress. Like I can think of a
yeah.
time this last week where it's like we both had stressful days and we just have different ideas of how that ends. you know,
Yeah, no,
it's
it's
like,
true.
yeah,
Like some people high stress, they're like, okay, this is, intimacy, sex is something that helps me relieve stress. And for other people, they're like, I am so tired and I can't like function to do anything and let alone sex. And so, yeah, being gracious towards one another in those things is a big part of it and understanding that you're not always going to be on the same page and that's okay. That's where the long game comes in. Like those things are going to happen and it's okay.
yeah. I think like every other thing too is like you know calibrating your rhythms and not just thinking about it. Like weekly was one of the things that comes up. I think a lot of people think about that, but another way to look at this in terms of your own schedule and how you spend time together. But it's why it's a big deal for us to think about the monthly, the quarterly, and the yearly rhythms for us, because our practice. Just to be honest, like the practices that I know in November we're going away for a week on our anniversary on a cruise ship. Like I know that's on the calendar. That's there. And there's going to be a different expectation for intimacy in that space. And so that is another, like, if you just feel like you're running on a treadmill week to week, day to day, which a lot of us, it's easy to feel that way because we all have, mundane jobs and mundane realities. But that quarter, like we just snuck away for one night last week. And those little interruptions and having things on the calendar, everybody's algorithm will be different. But as you enter into emptiness, you actually have the freedom to do that more. So that's just another thing that's been helpful.
The flip side, I will say to that, because I think the both and is important,
Mm.
is it may be something where you need to have time set aside where it could be like you're sneaking away for a night. And actually, the agreed
Yep.
thing is that this is actually a timeout. We're going away without that
Yes.
pressure on it. And that can also be something that is life giving. And again, decided ahead of time, not in the moment, is all of those things can be really
Yeah.
good.
And even those things, like we've already even started, like I realize even saying what I just said, that I just communicated an expectation, like going into like our time away,
Yeah.
we still need to have that conversation and make sure that we're on the same page. Cause yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Are we having that
No,
conversation
we're not
right
doing
now?
that right
Just
now.
kidding. Should we go back and talk
Well,
about
I
Awana?
no, but I actually, you mentioned that. I remember we talked about going away at the end of the year together, and there was, I won't get into what the specific thing was, but you mentioned like, oh, I have a concern about this. You just flagged it, and you
Yeah.
said, and so we'll be able to talk about that more before it comes up. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
good. You do a good job at this.
I do. Thanks, babe. So do you.
Yeah.
Um, it was a super good question. We only got through one.
That's it's a multi-layered question.
Yeah.
And we also made a lot of assumptions based on our experience and gender stereotypes.
You can
But
flip those as much as you need to.
yeah,
Like, we can only speak from our own experience.
yeah.
So I feel like trying to walk on eggshells of
If you've been
covering
watching this,
every possible like scenario. Gosh, if you're going to be offended, then
find a different
Andy
podcast.
at Andy Needham. I'm just kidding. We got like child protective services showing up for your parents. Now we got haters coming at us for gender stereotypes, and probably Awana. Some Awana commander somewhere is going to be writing us and be
Mm.
like, we need you to edit that.
Did you actually attend Awana?
Boy, I attend Awana. I was a champion at the stinking Awana Olympics.
Okay.
The
So
shout out to Linda,
what was your
three-legged race
three-legged
champ.
race? You're
No, I was
killing.
a champion in a lot of things, but three-legged race with Linda, we were
It's a
unstoppable.
pretty small town.
You know what? I don't need it. Is there like an Awana that's not a small Midwest? I feel like the Midwest is probably like a thriving Awana metropolis. I don't know. No, there was a lot of kids, but Linda and I kicked butt at the three-legged race. What was it? The beanbag on the head one. I was usually pretty good at that. We had the quizzing, the Bible quizzing.
You would be good.
Yeah, this is so far off script at this point, but yeah, no, firmly I want to stay on his brother. Just kidding. I do, honestly. I have very positive memories from Awana. And for all I know, there's a lot of flack given. I will acknowledge that for the Awana program because one, it requires an enormous amount of volunteers, which is like when you're on church staff is a nightmare. But the most scripture memorization I've ever done in my life was the years that I was at Awana. So I wanted those patches remember the little vests and you got
Oh
the
yeah.
patches?
I was
Yeah.
only a lead. They didn't add it at my church until I was too old for it. So I was like a leader. Yeah.
You didn't go through Awana?
Well, here's my claim to fame. All right, we'll close with this.
This should have come up in premarital counseling.
No, so in order to become a leader, you have to actually pass an exam. You have to take a test.
Really?
And I got the highest score.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I guess we can stay married.
Yeah.
Was it just like verses you had to know?
Well, there's like,
what is all
well,
this
you have to
test?
they do like a weekend or a day training in the program. And then at the end of it, you have to kind of go through and like multiple choice, like, to make sure that you run the program right. And I was
Yeah, but like what? Give me an example of a question.
like, what is the name of the boys group for 3rd and 4th graders?
Oh, so they're asking, they want you to know the Awana program.
Yeah,
This
they're
isn't like
training
biblical
you.
knowledge.
No.
Okay. Okay. I feel like they should spend less time doing that in these programs and more time maybe just background checking your leaders.
That's a different podcast.
Speaking of CPS.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make sure as we wrap this up today that I mention, and I'm going to awkwardly grab
What
this.
are you?
Yeah. Well, we have some additional merch. The Bethany Needham, and this is the first reveal was the prototype, but this is actually the product that you can purchase online if you go to bethanyneedham.com.
Oh.
And it also says is greater. It has the is greater than the Andy Needham band on there too. So
I feel like there should have been like a sign off from the old Andy Needham band, and this I feel like I'm insulting them, which I didn't.
It's my name. I would feel bad if it was somebody else's name.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
So yeah, this is a really comfortable. This sweatshirt is really feel how thick that.
I'm like
good
actually a little jealous because it is so cozy, and I can't wear that.
You could wear this. I used to wear the Andy Needham band shirts.
Yeah, but you were an actual band with actual.
But this is. So we had a request to do a giveaway, so we need to figure out how we're going to do that because I think maybe next week we'll launch our giveaway.
Yes.
But you can still buy stuff now though. Don't wait till the giveaway.
Buy it now. I got one friend we need to hook up with a signed.
Oh, yeah.
It's been requested enough that I feel like, we got to do. Our one of our kids wants us. He's like, I don't want to buy it. Just give it to me.
I was like, you decide to live on your own now, so pony up.
I still thought it was cute that they would wear something with their mom's name on it.
So cool. This is high quality merch. We also have there's also slightly off script merchandise. And my personal favorite one, which we need to get.
The mugs?
Well, the mugs are cool. So there's
Okay.
like Wicked Good Husband and Stupid Good Wife mugs. And then
No, stupid, good, and wicked fun.
sure,
Something like that.
whatever it is.
We're really good
But
with
then
our,
they have I'm trying out some other ideas, and the one that I think was pretty, you thought it was clever, is the 8 p.m. bedtime club. I have a shirt for the 8 p.m. bedtime club. So if you'd like to join the 8 p.m. bedtime club, you can,
I'm awkward about the stuff with my name on it, but I actually really do like the slightly off script stuff
Yeah.
that you put in the shop. So I'm gonna
go
order
go
our own
check it
stuff.
out. Go
I
check
love it.
Yeah, we're gonna continue to lose money on this podcast.
Perfect. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in, and
Thanks
we
for
appreciate
listening.
and sharing. And one of the things I was at a couple events this week, and I ran into some people that listen to the podcast, which is really, really awesome, and we really appreciate getting to do this.
Absolutely. And from this episode, just a shout out to back to the church
live event.
Yeah, live event. Shout out to Child Protective Services and Awana.
Awana, yeah, that's right. Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor, but you got shout outs. Probably not the shout outs you wanted, but there they are.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye.